Well, welcome back to week 4 of Dating Fine Line. I'm here to talk to you guys about dating from a young lady's perspective. Last week, Matt did young guys, and he gave some good general dating tips for you guys, so I hope that you took those to heart. Ladies, I know you're going to hear stuff that is very, let's say, what you're relating to right now. Guys, this may be totally new for you, and you're kind of like just realizing about our ladies and their feelings and how, to be honest, we're complicated. We're complicated human beings. We have heartstrings that if you pluck it wrong, we're going to be kind of gnarly at you. If you pluck it right, then we're going to be the sweetest thing on earth to you, right? I just want to say that I'm not a huge public speaker. I'm not going to be as sermon-y as Matt. You know, he can take 3 words in a line and then talk about it for 15 minutes. I can't do that. So I'm going to, it's the truth. I'm going to refer to my iPad here a lot of this time because I also get extremely off topic and down a rabbit trail. So to start off, I'm going to give a little short intro about me. I know a lot of you know of me. You know more who I am married to. So I'm just going to go through a little bit about my life, and I'll circle back to how I dated in the past to being married to Matthew. So a little bit about me. I was born in Massachusetts, moved to Maine when I was 4. When you think of Maine, I live on the very, very bottom point. It's literally called Kittery Point of Maine. I went to a private Christian school over in New Hampshire, which is like 30 minutes away, from K through 12. It's the largest private school up there in New England that does K through 12. The atmosphere up there is nothing like here. Like this street out here has like 10 churches on it, which I think is like so weird. But back home, you have maybe 1 church in the whole town, right? A lot of the churches up there are Catholic churches. You have Lutheran churches. You have some random one that just popped up and you have no idea what it is. And they have some weird flag out that you still don't know what it is, but you know, they're claiming whatever. I grew up in a Christian home, went to church on Sunday, you know the shebang. I was super involved in the youth group when I was in middle school. In the beginning of high school. Then about freshman year, we had a little ordeal in the church that we were at. So our family took us out and we church hopped for about 2 years. And that's when I had kind of a conflict with the Lord. I was like, God, why did you take me from all the friends that I had? Like you guys are here. Like I just got ripped out of it. Couldn't say bye, but I just ripped out. And I didn't know why because I was 14 at the time, maybe, so I had no idea what was going on. We church hopped. We visited a ton of old traditional churches. Most of the population was super elderly people, and there was no youth, so it was kind of like I could care less to go to church just because I'm not getting anything out of it. About my senior year, we found East Point Christian Church up in Portland, which is 45 minutes from my house. So every single Sunday, we would drive all the way to Portland and all the way back every Sunday, but it was worth it, right? I was getting the genuine Christian message that all of you get here or at your churches around here. Then I went to Liberty, graduated, went to Liberty. I was undecided through sophomore year. That was the semester that I met Matt. But I decided to do event planning with a minor in business. At the time, I was working weddings at a venue. It's still my passion to do weddings. I haven't really dug my toes in here yet in this area, just because I wanted to get settled, meet all of you, meet everyone over there, which is a bit overwhelming. So having a job was kind of like, okay, I think we'll put a pause on that. But it's nice not to have a job. Let's see. I graduated in 2022, so literally last year around this time. In September of last year, I married Matt. And now I moved here. And now here we are, and I'm speaking to you, and it feels weird. Never on earth would I imagine me speaking to a youth group, let me tell you. But God works in mighty, mighty ways. So retracking on my dating experience, when I was little, obviously you had those little crushes and you're like, oh, he's cute, or, she's cute. I had a couple crushes in 4th grade. I was the girl who hung out with all the guys, never hung out with the girls. I wanted to play ball. I wanted to race them at recess, whereas all the little girls kind of just like clustered in groups and were like, like talking about the latest gossip, 7th and 8th grade was when, the gears kind of turned like, oh, like I actually understand what a girlfriend and a boyfriend is, and that other guys actually like me. But I never had any boyfriends because my parents were a little strict on the dating. Got into high school. It was my senior year, and let me tell you, that relationship was so toxic. He was a jock. He was a year younger than me. I hid the relationship from my parents because I knew that they hated dating. Let's say he didn't treat me as a girlfriend. It was more of just a hobby to him, whereas I took it very seriously and devoted my whole entire being to him, as you can say. I graduated high school, went to college still dating him secretly, right? Because I knew my parents kind of knew that I liked him, that he liked me, but they didn't know anything behind the scenes. I get to college, and that's when I got Snapchat. I didn't get a phone until I was in sophomore year of high school. I got Snapchat in college, and that became our kind of communication. We'd talk every day. It'd be the occasional snap that you guys all send your friends, but it was nothing meaningful, nothing like that. Around this time, prom season, he went to prom with the girl that I always questioned in our relationship. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I trust you. I know nothing will happen. He goes to prom. The next day, he dumps me. He sends me a huge paragraph on Snapchat, and he's like, hey, I don't think this is working. I think we're unequally yoked. And I was like, what in the heck is going on? Where did this come from? The next day, I found out from my girlfriends that were in his grade that he had cheated on me prom night. And that instead of dealing with my reaction toward it, he decided to dump me. And so it was literally the week that I was going to come back home from college. So Maine to Virginia is about 12 hours. And so I remember literally crying my eyeballs out that whole entire night. And my friends were there to kind of support me, but I just fully cried my eyes out. And then that was kind of it. I didn't talk to him ever again. Still have never talked to him ever again. Haven't seen him since then. And I felt like garbage. I felt like a total waste. I felt worthless. How could someone invest so much time in me to just kind of dump me in one day? Just because there was a situation that he didn't want to deal with. Fast forward to fall of my sophomore year, the semester that I met Matt. That whole summer was where I kind of found myself. I was 18, 19. I don't know. I was somewhere in that age group, kind of close to where you guys are at. At Liberty, on Wednesday nights, they have what's called Campus Community. It's kind of like a youth group for all the students, except it's just worship and a message. And they did a series on It's Complicated, which is a whole dating series. And my life was literally turned around. I rededicated myself to the Lord, and I found my identity in Him. And unexpectedly, I met Matt. And all of you know the story, and it wasn't love at first sight for us. I thought he was super stupid because he had a bright red cast going from here to here. He was on that scooter that you sit down and you're like this with. And he's trying. Every Thursday I played indoor soccer with all the guys, and our guy best friend invited him, and I was like, who's this dummy trying to go around and kicking the ball on his scooter? And he's falling over, and I'm sure his mom probably wouldn't let him play, but he's still going at it. And so after that, he kept hanging out with our friend group. Not sure why, but he kept coming. And we started talking. A group of us shared our testimonies in a cookout right by Liberty. And then he got my Snap somehow. I think I needed to go to Michael's craft store. And that's a whole story in itself. But he drove me there because I didn't have a car at college. And then that's when it started. Like, oh, like we enjoy each other's company. And like it was nothing but pure friendship. I would go on drives with Matthew. We liked to listen to music. And I'd come back and my girlfriends would be like, ooh, Maddie, like what's going on there? And I was like, no, literally guys, he's just a friend and we're literally just driving around listening to music. But obviously they didn't believe me. That was at the time that Matt was still interviewing for this job right here. So every car ride, he'd get a call from like Aaron or anyone, and I'd be right there on speakerphone listening to them. It was really funny. But he was interviewing for here. Our relationship was kind of in that talking stage that you all call it. And we just continued to hang out. I'm not really sure what sparked it, but one day Matt was like, hey, Maddie, can I be serious with you? And I was like, yeah, sure. He was like, Maddie, I like you. And I was like, I think I like you too. And so that kind of started off. So after that, things got a little bit more intense relationship-wise. We started talking more about our favorite things. Literally our first date conversation was, I hate raw tomatoes, he hates peanut butter. We say that we're allergic to them, but we like cheese. That was literally our conversation. And it's funny to think about it now, but that's what you guys talk about, when you're trying to get to know someone, right? You talk about the random things that you like. And so that progressed. And then we talked about dating, hey, is this a serious thing? I, as a girl, had to think about the way beyond future, now, this future right now is what I had to think about. I had to be am I willing to move to West Virginia? Am I willing to move from all my family that is up there at home down here into the middle of West Virginia? Not that that's a bad thing. But I also had to think about if I wanted to be a pastor's wife, right? That is a huge responsibility. And I had no idea what being a pastor's wife even meant. But I knew that I loved Matthew, but I hadn't told him yet. So I had to think about that. Talked to my parents, and they were like, yeah, well, he's 3 years older than you. He's in a totally different phase of life. You're still doing college after he graduates. And I was like, yeah. And I've been praying about it. Eventually, we were like, all right, we want to date. So I was like, I want you to call my dad and ask for my dad's blessing on dating. But before that, Matt had told me that he didn't want to date for the rest of the college year. He wanted to graduate first. And so I was like, okay, I respect you in that. And then a week later, I circled back and I was like, hey, we've been hanging out a lot. I don't really get why we aren't dating right now because we're both here physically and we're about to go do long distance for however many years that was going to be. And he was like, yeah, let me pray about it. I'll get back to you. He came back and he was like, yeah, I think we should start dating right now. And I was like, okay. So we called my dad and got his blessing. And that was in December, the second week of December or something. And we only had 2 weeks left together before we did long distance. We did long distance for 2.5 years of long distance. I was in Maine and he was here. Let me tell you that FaceTime can only do so much. All right, that face-to-face is really what bonds you guys together. And doing FaceTime really it was good some days and some days it was not good. And that's when Matt was doing his video games. And at the beginning, I was like, oh, cool, he's doing video games. And that's what he likes to do. And then it got into I kind of hate that he plays video games because he's not paying attention to me. He's not connecting with me. My big thing was that he wasn't spending quality time with me. but Matt didn't know what quality time meant. And I know long distance, you can only do so much. But I remember one night, I was just so frustrated with him. And I was like, you know what, Matt, you're just not spending enough quality time with me. And then I was like, I'm going to bed. And he was playing video games, and he was like, okay. And then I hung up. And then the next day, I guess he kind of thought about it. And then he gave up all those video games, and I'm sure he preached about it the next Wednesday that he had, if you guys remember. And that pulled on my heartstrings, right? He had the thought of, if I give up my video games, I can get closer to Maddie. And that showed me that he was willing to sacrifice something that he loved, right? In order to pay more attention to me, to grow together with me in the Lord, right? So that was a huge thing. And then we got engaged in November. And then a year later, we got married. So that's kind of my whole dating history with my ex, with Matthew. And every situation is different. There's a lot more details to my story that I don't have time to express to you today. But if you ever do want to know my experience, or if you have the same situation as me, I'd love to talk to you about it. But I'm going to dive in. Now, I have so much content that I don't know if I'll even be able to get through it all. I rehearsed earlier today, and it took me an hour, so we're going to try to chop that in half. So to start off with, everyone needs to know about the building stages of a relationship, okay? Honestly, when I was young and in your age group, no one really talked to me about dating. Like, it was slightly talked about in youth group, but then I left youth group, and I didn't have any knowledge on it. My parents didn't like dating, so they never really talked about it. They were just like, you can't have a boyfriend, you can't go to the mall with him, you're just going to have to deal with that, and you're going to have to wait for college. Which, now that I look back at, was probably some great advice, but Maddie Thing did not want to take that advice at the time. So for relationship stages, we have it here. All these notes are not going to fit on your note card, so feel free to kind of shorthand this. But I'm just going to go through this list. The first stage of a relationship, this is for any relationship, so school, work, sports relationships, church relationships. The first stage is your initial meeting and awareness. So usually that takes place in any of those groups, like youth group right now, right? The second stage is the selection process. So these are like first impressions that you make. You're slowly starting to talk to each other, right? You have maybe some physical attraction that comes up, like, oh, I think that guy over there is kind of cute. Oh, she's kind of cute. Like, I should go talk to her, you know? You start up those conversations, you get together in groups, that sort of thing. The third stage is developing intimacy. So what that starts with is a degree of closure. So you go from speaking about safe topics like cheese and tomatoes and peanut butter, right, to more vulnerable topics. So you kind of take that cover off your heart and you start sharing those really deep things. Like you might share something about your family and what's upsetting you with your family, what's going on with a different relationship, with friends, or anything like that. The fourth stage is maintaining or dissolving. So this is where you kind of figure out, hey, am I going to keep this relationship? Or am I going to let go of it? Am I going to move on? Am I just going to be kind of like distance friends with them, right? Or you're going to continue to grow with them, okay? In relationships, we know as humans, we are very irrational. We focus on our emotions. And if we don't think about them rationally, right, then things can end up being pretty bad. Individuals may stay with those abusive partners. So like I could have stayed with my toxic boyfriend in high school just because I thought it was safe, that I was just settling for someone that I had comfort in. When in reality, we know that they're not the right match, right? And you need to find your identity in the Lord, which we'll get to here in a second. the next slide, I think it is, we cannot lose our sense of objectivity when dating. We must learn to see beyond our nose and exercise discriminating judgment, right? So what that means is that really the word is infatuation, which I'll get to here in a little bit. We get so overcome, so consumed that we get tunnel vision, right? Like when I first started liking Matt, it was like everything revolves around Matt. Like I didn't really worry about my academics. I didn't worry about my other social life. Like it was literally, I want to hang out with Matthew. Like that's it. And I wanted to eat meals with Matthew. I wanted to hang out with Matthew. I wanted to text and FaceTime Matthew at nighttime. Like that, and I know that's where you guys are all at in your relationships. Like it all just revolves around that person that you kind of are starting to like. The next one on the slides is relationships about falling in love. So we talked about this in the Q&A. Matt talked about it a little bit last time in his message. But falling in love, so stages for falling in love, right? That first one is building rapport. So you're talking, you're seeing what they like, what they're doing, if they have the same beliefs as you, the same values. Then the next one is self-revelation, right? Where we start to feel kind of easy. That's not the safe, but that vulnerable stage, right? Then you have mutual dependencies. So one person depends on the other to fulfill their needs, which a lot of you can get focused on a little too much, right? Because you have no idea. You know that you just love this person so much that you're willing to kind of do anything for them. Let's see. Such as show appreciation, confirming their ideas, validating their life experiences. They demonstrate love in real and concrete ways, and is exclusive in the relationship. The last one is intimacy, need fulfillment. So here, the couple, your boyfriend, girlfriend, has undergone the first three. So rapport, self-revelation, mutual dependencies. And the relationship is now evolved to a point where you can say with some level of confidence that you are in love, right? So after all that, that's kind of where you get the butterflies. And you're like, I would literally do anything for this person. So be aware of these stages. If you ever have questions of if you're falling in love, kind of look at these boxes, right? Have I built rapport? Have I done a self-revelation about it? And then go through each one, okay? The next one I want to talk about is red flags. What does red flags mean to you guys? Good answer, Gavin. Red flags in a relationship, what does it mean? Mm-hmm. So something you don't think is right. Anything else? Sure. Yes. So some red flags. Here is a list. I'm just going to read them just so we can go through this quickly. Questions to ask when you think you are falling in love. And jot some of these down if you think that they could apply to you, okay? First one is, do you or your partner compromise personal values in order to appease or police the other? Do you and your partner edify or contribute to each other's own personal and spiritual growth? Let me tell you, if that isn't a yes, then you shouldn't be dating them. If they aren't, what Matt drew on this board right here, so if this is your girl, your guy that you like, and they're here on the opposite, and God's up here, if you both aren't working together, you're not drawing closer together, and you're not drawing closer to the Lord, right? So make sure that you're both growing spiritually together, but also separate. Another one is, do each of you maintain some healthy degree of autonomy, which means like self-government, like you can make your own decisions, you have your own space. Is your relationship meaningful and purposeful, or is it some temporal thing you maintain on the side? So like I said before, kind of like my ex did it as a hobby, right? And like that's meaningless. Like you shouldn't be dating. But, immature Maddie thought that he was the love of my life, right? And that I was going to marry him down the road. Clearly that did not happen. Are you or your parent possessive, jealous, or demanding? Are you friends? Are you totally honest with each other? Are you embarrassed or ashamed of your partner in front of others? Okay, that's a big one. What secret baggage do you or your partner have that you have not told each other? Let me say that this is very important. If I'm not saying, like Matt said before, you don't want to be married in your dating, but once you start dating and you become serious and you actually talk about marriage, right? Those are when those secrets need to come out, right? Because if you're hiding them and you get married and it causes a huge problem in your marriage, it's not going to go well. You're going to have to go through honestly, probably counseling with each other. You're going to have to work on yourself, what it brings to the marriage, okay? Another one is, are there extreme things in each other's family background that will negatively impact your future relationship, okay? Sometimes your girlfriend or your boyfriend, their family aren't Christian. Is that going to affect your relationship? Things like that, okay? Moving on, what I pulled from this is two kinds of love while you're dating. There is passionate love and there is compassionate love. Based on that, which one do you think is better? Without looking at the screen real quick. Passionate? Compassionate? Compassionate? Oh, passionate. All right. Well, let's go through these two loves. Passionate love. Intensely emotional, persistent, strong sexual desire, emphasis on being great lovers, unstable and unpredictable, need to idealize the other, very consuming, subjected to strong jealousy, limited in duration. Hey, just wait a minute. Compassionate love, strong emotional bonds, varying sexual desire, so it's not all consuming, but it's still there. An emphasis on being best friends, stable, which is firm and consistent. You want consistent, ladies. Effort to be realistic about the other, very supporting, minimal jealousy, can last a lifetime. But let me say this, when you have compassionate love, you have passionate love. Does that make sense? Okay. So now which one seems better to y'all? Compassionate love. All right, keep that in mind as you're dating, okay? So the ideal love that all of us desire usually contain three components. Intimacy, right? We want to be intimate with other. We want to be close. We want that intense love, that passion that we just talked about, and commitment, right? We want to know that they're in there for the long haul, that no matter what good, what bad that you go through, they're going to be there by your side supporting you. The next one is infatuation. Do you know what that means? I know I've said it a couple times. Anyone? What? Attraction. Anyone else? What does infatuation mean to you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So infatuation is when you are all consumed, like that tunnel vision that I talked about earlier. Like nothing can deter you from thinking about those butterflies, that giddy, like, ooh, I'm going to see him at youth group, or I'm going to see him at the next ball game, right? Those kind of things. But infatuation, to give you a visual representation, is like an hourglass, right? So you have that sand in there. And once you become smitten or you get those butterflies, suddenly the sand starts to pour down, okay? Starts to pour and pour. But there's only a specific amount of sand in the hourglass. And once that starts, usually, statistically, I looked up that it's about 12 to 18 months that infatuation lasts. And even though infatuation goes away, you start to see those weaknesses in each other. You start to see those problems that come up that you kind of surpass during that infatuation phase because you were just so in love with that person, right? And it opens you up to something a lot more that you didn't see because you were so blinded. I've experienced it myself, right? I got tunnel vision and I didn't look up, and I didn't listen to my parents. I didn't listen to the friends that were around me saying, hey, like, does he actually love you? Is he actually, like, caring for you? And I was like, oh, yeah, like, he's just loving me in his own way. Like, that's just what dating is. Lord have mercy on my soul. That is not what dating is. But yeah, it's like an hourglass. Once it goes out, it will never have as much intensity as it did those first couple months that you're dating. It's just, Matt can totally relate to it. Obviously, we still love each other so deeply, but it's not as infatuated as before. There's not as much intense love, and I'm sure the Rogars can totally relate to that as well, since they've been married a much longer time than me and Matthew. But usually that sexual chemistry and the romantic attraction, it stays, right? You're still attracted to them, you still love them, but let me tell you that does not hold the glue to your relationship at all. That's not what's going to get you through the next 50, 80 years of marriage, right? And that's a long time. It's a long time to be married to someone. So feelings become more warm and dependable instead of excitable and hot. Does that make sense? Like, you don't have that, like, oh, butterflies, like, he looked at me kind of feeling, right? Let's see. So how do you know if you are infatuated? All right, I'm going to list this off. And if this resonates with you, then you are infatuated with someone, okay? All right. 1, the lover focuses on the beloved's better traits and overlooks or minimizes flaws. Infatuated people exhibit extreme energy, hyperactivity, sleeplessness, impulsivity, euphoria, and mood swings. 1 or both of the partners develops a goal-oriented fixation on winning the beloved. Let me tell you, men, I know that you do this. Girls, not as much. You want to win that girl over. You want to show her your best qualities, how strong you are, how smart you are, and we love it. Don't get us wrong. We love it, right? But you need to control it. Relational passion is heightened, not weakened by adversity. The more the relationship is attacked, the more the passion grows. The lovers become emotionally dependent on the relationship, like I talked about earlier. Partners reorder their daily priorities to remain in contact as much as humanly possible, and even experience separation anxiety when they're apart. All right, I experienced this when I started dating Matt, especially since we went into long distance. Like, that was like communication on steroids is what we had to do to keep the relationship alive. Empathy is so powerful that many report they would die for their beloved. Obviously, right now, if someone were to shoot Matthew, I would jump in front of it and die for him. But obviously, in that beginning stages, Chris said maybe I wouldn't, but we'll see. But obviously, in that infatuated state, it's kind of just like a silly expression that you say to make sure that you tell them that you love them, right? Sexual desire is intense, and the relationship becomes marked by extreme possessiveness. This can be very toxic if you are controlling. Guys, girls, do not be controlling in your relationship, especially while you're dating. Because if you're dating and you're controlling, that's what you're going to be like in your marriage. And no wife, no husband wants to have to deal with that. They want their own freedom. Obviously, in marriage, you're committed and submitting to your husband, your wife, right? But there's a point where you should not be controlling the other person and taking away from their life. Also, ladies, just a dating tip. If you want to know how a guy is going to treat you as a wife, listen. Make sure that you watch him interact with his mom. If he calls her, or if you're there physically with their family, make sure that you are watching and observing how they talk to their mom. Because let me tell you, that is how they are going to treat you in your marriage, okay? So that's a little trip by Maddie, because I did that with Matt, and he was very sweet to his mom. So the next point, as Christians, the initial onslaught of feelings is involuntary. What we do with those feelings is how we control our thoughts, and the level of our obsessiveness is our responsibility, right? We need to control it. We need to manage it, because as Christians, we know we're tempted, right? We know that we shouldn't be tempting ladies, right? Dressing modestly. Your butt shouldn't be hanging out and your cleavage shouldn't be out, right? To be very frank. It's tempting the guys, right, to look. I'm going to look in this because it's right there. But that's something that you as Christians need to know, right? So you need to train those thoughts. You need to see the lies of the world because social media, oh my goodness, I feel so bad for you. I mean, I have it, right? But I didn't grow up with it, so it didn't affect me as much as it's affecting you, and all the photoshopping, all the fake accounts going on. Like, it's crazy. We may not be able to choose that initial onslaught, but like I said, we know that we're going to be tempted. We can feed it, we can starve it, we can indulge it, or we can test it, right? And this is where a lot of us struggle with that. When the relationship hits a rough spot, as it usually does, most people who have overwhelming feelings will ignore those issues raised by the conflict and try to make the relationship work because they have those strong feelings, right? That infatuation of like, nothing is going to steer me away from this man or this girl. And that's where wisdom comes in, right? It says that you need to be patient, that you need to pray, that you need to seek the Lord in that. And wisdom says that we should try to make a relationship work not because we have strong feelings, but because it's a good match, right? And far too often we are motivated to preserve that relationship if those feelings are there and if the match makes sense. And that wisdom is where we find our total understanding, all of our knowledge in Jesus Christ, right? If you fear the Lord, he is going to be with you. He knows that you know that temptation is coming and that he will help you prepare for that, right? Emotions are powerful things, and you can, let me put an emphasis on this, you cannot play around with them, right? Girls have very sensitive emotions. Guys, you're a little more tough. Until you let someone in and you're such to be vulnerable, then your heartstrings can be hurt, right? Do not play with each other's emotions. That's where you communicate, right? Matt has put a huge emphasis on communication, and that's a huge, huge thing, okay? Moving forward, if you would rather not declare your love because you want to make sure the relationship is wise, that's counting the cost. That's love. If you would rather know whether your feelings are returned before you even know whether the relationship would honor God, that's selfishness. So we need to analyze the fruit of your love, your willingness to sacrifice, and your commitment to the other person's welfare. So date like Jesus would, right? You're created in his image. Treat your neighbors as you would want to be treated, right? That's where that goes. So to specifically talk about dating from a young lady's perspective, ladies, we are romantic beings, right? We crave that affection. We crave that love. We want them to bring us flowers. We want them to kiss our forehead. We want them to open our car door for them. Although Matt has not been opening my car door, but I'll talk to him about it later. It does have a lot of bird poop on it, though. Anyways, guys, pay attention to this. This is a list that I made when I dated. I'm not saying that, ladies, you need to go exactly by this list, but I say that it worked out pretty good in my after my ex and dating Matthew. What we look for in a future husband: a fun personality. Let me tell you, Matt was the most bubbly person I've ever met, and for whatever reason, it drew me towards him. Like, it was contagious. I wanted to laugh, and he made me laugh, right? He's good looking, right? Obviously, we want to be attracted to our future spouse. He's mature. He has grown from freshman year. I'm just kidding. He's caring and has a loving heart. Affectionate, so he does all those sweet things. But let me tell you, don't expect your man to do that unless you tell him that you like him to do that, right? Because guys are not thinking about buying you flowers and getting you chocolate unless you aren't feeling good or it's a holiday, okay? They're strong-willed. They're God-fearing and pursuing. They're hardworking. They have a good work ethic, so they're not lazy. They want to go provide for you. They're smart. They're authentic and genuine, so they have a good, solid character. They truly love you, right? And my biggest one on this list was he was selfless, which is hard. And I know that we're human and we are selfish, and I'm selfish, right? But if he's selfless and he's looking to serve you, you know that he's a good man, okay, ladies? So what a woman needs emotionally and mentally and physically in a relationship, especially in marriage, is closeness, openness, understanding, peacemaking, loyalty, and esteem. So I put these up here, and I gave a little bit of what each one means. Ladies, guys, I would write this one down if you haven't written anything all night. Closeness, she wants you to be close. She wants you to hold your hand. She wants you to hug her on the couch. She wants you to open that car door, right? Openness, she wants you to open up to her. I know this is a really hard one for the gentlemen, right? They want to be tough, and they don't want their little heart being opened by their girl. But let me tell you, when you open up to her, it's a whole different kind of love that she gives you. Understanding. I've told Matt a couple of times in our marriage this one. Don't try to fix her or the situation. Just listen. All right, guys, we know that you want to fix it right away. Like your mentality is, I'm fixing this. Where's my hammer and nails? All right, the girls don't want you to fix it. Sometimes they do. But on the most part, they do not want you to fix it, all right? They just want you to listen to their problems, even though that list might be very long, okay? Listen is a huge one. Peacemaking, she wants you to say, I'm sorry. All right, guys, I know that's also a very hard one. I mean, for me, I'm a very competitive person, and so is Matt. So saying I'm sorry is very hard for us. Matt does tend to say I'm sorry first most of the time, just because I'm also selfish, right? And it takes me a lot longer to kind of think through what we were talking about, what we were maybe arguing about, and then come back and be like, you're right, I'm sorry, I was selfish. So that's a big one. Loyalty, she needs to know you're committed. So she needs to know that through thick and thin, like that song, you're going to be there for her. You're going to pray with her. You're going to hold her hand. And you're going to be like, we're in this together, honey. Esteem, she wants you to honor and cherish her, right? She wants to feel valuable, guys. She wants that affection. She wants that loving character. That's a huge one. So real quick, while I wrap up, the spiritual context, since it wasn't super sermon-y, I should probably insert some scripture in here somewhere. But the Christian requirement for dating is found in 2 Corinthians 6:14, which I didn't have in my notes apparently, but oh, there it is. Don't team up with those who are unbelievers. How can righteousness be a partner with wickedness? How can light live with darkness? I know Matt touched on this one a lot with the Q&A in his last message, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But know that if you are unequally yoked, you probably shouldn't be dating. You will not change that person. It is rare that you do. My ex called himself a Christian, but really he wasn't a Christian, right? And so he did pull that unequally yoked on me in his dump text. But let's just say that you should not be unequally yoked. Because, however, being saved, right, is enough for a relationship to be unified, because not necessarily. As we approach that marriage, right, you have God, you have your husband, you have your wife, and if you're seeking Christ personally, and then together you grow closer to the Lord. And everyone changes over time, and if you can't grow with that person, then it's most likely not going to work out. And it takes faith and work, right? God isn't going to hand it to you on a silver platter. Like, you have to work for your relationship. Last thing here. How much time do I have? Is it 8:10 now? Okay. Relationship mission based. Matt talks about having scripture in your bio, and this one's mine. But seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. If two people join themselves around this mission, if they make their marital choice based on the best person who they can accomplish this with, they are far more likely to have a fulfilling and soul-building marriage. And this starts in that dating phase, right? Like, I had to think about if I wanted to move to West Virginia, if I could be a pastor's wife. That's where that starts, okay? That maturity and, okay, I need to take a step back from the infatuation and see long-term goals of what I want our relationship to look like. We need to fully rely on God's process and trust him, right? Because the Lord is going to be there for you. He's going to provide. When you start trusting in him, personally pursuing him, God wants to bless you. That's the greatest thing. And a lot of us don't even know that. Like, God wants to bless you when you pursue him and chase after him. And it's a lovely thing. And obviously, if you don't, some of you have experienced the consequences, and some, I'm sure, are probably coming in the near future. But focus your pursuit on the Lord, and this should be your first characteristic in a boyfriend and a spouse. That should be on top of that list that we kind of talked about in the Q&A, right? That good values, that loyalty, that honesty. But that pursuit of the Lord needs to be at the very, very top of that list, okay? And if you date someone who's more of kind of like a surface guy, kind of like my ex, right? Like, he kind of just did it for the status, the hobby, that sort of thing. Later on in life, you would be wishing that you looked for a man with a better, solid character, right? Instead of those surface characteristics. So, such as like appearance, like he's good looking, he has good charm, right? Matt talked about that it usually fades away, versus maybe looking at someone who's really good with kids, right? Who's really nice to their mama, and who is hardworking and serving, who is humble. When we say a humble man is a good man, okay? Also, that they're able to forgive, handles conflict in a healthy way, communicates, prays for you and with you. Those are two very distinct things, right? He needs to be praying, you need to be praying, and then you pray together. Makes and keeps friends, okay? That's very healthy. To wrap up, just real quick, just like the mission we talked about here earlier with the Matthew, this verse right here. Couples should be risking for God together, growing in God together, facing the excitement of life on the edge of serving God together. This should be your main focus, right? When you're serving the Lord, your relationship will be blessed. And the next point, the biggest point to take away from tonight, is it's not just about what we do for God, it's about who we become in God, okay? It's a huge, huge difference. So we can say that we do all this stuff, but if it's not becoming who you are, then honestly, there's no point in doing those actions, okay? In the end, really, we need to be so connected to God first that we actually displease our partner, right? If your partner is getting jealous that you're pursuing the Lord and not them, then you probably shouldn't be with them. And that tended to be my ex too, towards the end, where I started leaning more on the Lord than he, and he hated that. So my challenge to you is to continue to grow in holiness, learn to depend on God, increase your ability to love. This will help you find a good match and keep a healthy relationship, okay? That is all I have on dating from a young lady's perspective. I'm going to close this in prayer,